Good morning. Welcome to Sky News Breakfast. Boris Johnson is facing fresh threats to his leadership this morning, with reports suggesting Conservative rebels are plotting their next move to unseat him. Speaking in the last few minutes in the Rwandan capital, Kigali, the Prime Minister told our political editor, Beth Rigby, that he understands people's frustrations, but wants to get on with the job. Here's the full interview.
You told me yesterday people are bound to continue to beat you up. Do you feel beaten at the moment?
No. So I was speaking metaphorically, and what I mean is that when you're the leader of a country, in good times and in bad, you have to think about the criticisms that you get, and you have to recognise that people inevitably, when you're the head of a government that's taking country through a big inflationary price spike caused by the increasing cost of energy, people are frustrated. People are at the filling up their cars and cursing as they do so. I understand that. We have to help them, and I understand people's frustration. So what I'm saying is that politics is about allowing people to have the democratic safety valve of letting off at governments, but then such as in by-elections. But then the job of a leader is to say, well, what is the criticism that really matters here? And I think, back to what I was saying to you just now, I think it's that for a long time people were hearing not enough about the things that really matter to them, far too much about.
But the criticism was
stuff.
about you, sir.
That's right.
It was about you.
That's right. And I think what people were hearing.
But you do acknowledge that you are part of the problem.
What I certainly think is that if you look at the by-elections, people were absolutely fed up about hearing about things that I'd stuffed up, endless churn of stuff, and what they wanted to hear was, well, yeah, but what is this guy? What is this guy doing? And so I want to talk about our plan to help people with the cost of living, what we're doing for a stronger economy, our plan for a stronger economy, but also, of course, what we're doing here in Kigali, in Germany, and then at NATO. To stand up against aggression.
Just to follow up on that, it's not just voters, it's also your backbenchers, whether you like it or disagree with them. They're now talking back home about changing the 22 rules again for another confidence vote. It's not just voters angry with you, is it? What's your response to those MPs that want to change the rules and force another confidence vote?
So my response is golden rule. Rule number one of politics is focus on what we're doing, what we've been elected to do to help people take the country forward. I think that my party, the Conservative government, the Conservative Party, can be very proud of having delivered some pretty tough things. We got Brexit done when people thought it was impossible. We got the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe. We got lowest unemployment for a very long time. We led the world in helping to support the Ukrainians. We're now, thanks to the sensible management of the economy, in a position to help people across the country.
Give me a break.
£1,200. No, 12. My message is to focus on what matters to everyone else. Let's not talk about ourselves. Let's talk about
I haven't got long left as ever, so let's move on to things that matter to voters as well. Although I do think Partygate did matter to voters, and that was part of the problem, wasn't it? It did matter.
I think certainly people were absolutely fed up about hearing about that again and again and again, and yeah, I think it was
and the number of fines.
I think it was something that showed that to them that we needed to focus on the stuff that matters.
Let's focus on it, because there is an issue of trust and people believe in what you say. In October last year, I asked you if you were worried about inflation, and you told me fears over inflation were, to quote you, unfounded. It's just hit a 40-year high and is now at 9.1%. Why did you say that?
Because at that time, there were people who had, I think, forecast higher rates. But it's clearly an issue that we have to.
Did you get that wrong, though? Didn't you?
It's clearly an issue that we have to deal with now, and I think let's be absolutely clear. The management of inflation over the last 25 years has been done by the Independent Bank of England. I think overall they've done an outstanding job. They've kept it about 2%. But what we need to do is what we as government need to do is find all the ways we can to take out cost for people up and down the country. So let me give you some examples.
Yeah, I'm going to run out of time though.
But people want to know this. Fixing our energy markets, making sure that we reform our transport system, sorting out our our housing and our planning system to reduce the cost of housing, which is a huge part of people's budgets. So we're taking short-term action with cash that we have, that we've built up to help people, but also fixing the underlying supply side problems.
Tax cuts, because you said yesterday you're now freezing, and I contributed and full duties. You said, I know it won't slake your thirst or satiate your appetite for tax cuts, but it shows the direction we're trying to go in. So, in principle, more tax cuts next year. I don't need to give you. Don't need to
Rishi
give me...
Sunak and I are both instinctively believers that if you can let people spend their own money, if you can reduce the costs and the regulatory burdens, or unnecessary regulatory burdens on business, then you will drive stronger economic growth. So our plan for a stronger economy certainly includes responsible tax cuts.
Next year?
They are coming in next month in the form of big cuts to people's national insurance contributions.
Additional tax cuts next year?
We've already put in cuts to council tax and fuel duty.
Additional tax cuts next year?
And I know you want me to go further, but...
well, it's not me, it's people that can't pay their bills,
and of course, we will do what we can, but what we're doing immediately to help people is cutting the taxes that I've mentioned, but also giving people the cash that they need to tide them over. We hope in tough times. Look, I'm not going to pretend, Beth, that the government can go around fixing every problem. And this global inflation problems that we've got. Talk to everybody here at the Commonwealth. They're tough. We've got a spike in the cost of food, fertiliser, fuel.
I'm going to ask you one more thing, and then I've got to finish, because one thing you can do is help public sector workers with wages. Lots of calls for pay rises across the public sector, but am I right in saying that nurses, teachers, the police are going to have to settle for a real terms pay cut next year?
Look, the pay review bodies will have to make their recommendations. But what I would, generally
but you
speaking,
set the parameters. The government sets the parameters.
Generally speaking, what we've had in the last few years is significant pay increase, I think, for 5 million public sector workers. Remember what we did for nurses as soon as I came in, tried to give them more support. We've invested massively in the police that you mentioned. What we can't have is a situation in which increases in pay are just wiped out by further increases in prices. And so that's why you've got to be responsible.
I know, but when private sector pay rises are currently running at 8% and you're targeting 2 to 3%, will you at least consider a slightly higher target than that? I mean, people are really struggling.
Of course I get that. Of course I get that. But
I mean,
I'm not going to. What we must do is be responsible and ensure that people's increases in pay, which I want to see,
but
are not wiped out by increases in prices.
They will have to have a real terms pay cut, won't they?
You're going to have to wait and see where we get to.
So you're going to give them a 9% pay rise?
You have to wait and see where we get to. And what we want to do...
You might give them a 9% pay rise.
Take the railways. What we want to see, for instance, in that area, where the demands for increased wages. Train drivers are on 59,000. Some train drivers, 20% of train drivers are on £70,000. Fine, they want to go. They want to go on strike, or their union leaders do. I would say, given the circumstances we're in, I think what we want to see is reform and improvement in the way the railways work and modernisation. And when you've got 25% fall in ridership, which we've got at the moment, and you've got the government putting billions and we're putting more into the railways than any previous government. I think the travelling public has a right to expect some basic reforms, like with ticket offices, like with walking time and some of these other practices that really nobody defends except the union leaders.
Bringing our political correspondent Rob Powell now. Morning to you, Rob. The PM seemed quite confident about his position there, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting, though, for a Prime Minister that rarely ever admits personal fault and his own personal individual contributions to the wider party's woes recently. He came awfully close to it in that interview where he said that people were fed up about hearing about things that I've stuffed up and they want to know what is this guy really doing. So coming pretty close to admitting that personal faults, that things he's stuffed up might be causing some of these problems. But I think crucially, what Boris Johnson is doing when he says that is this sort of tactic that we've heard from him before, where he kind of removes himself by one from the issue, from the Tory party woes, from the problems, by saying that it's not necessarily him stuffing up that's causing the problem, it's that people keep hearing about him stuffing up. So he's separating himself away, and at least partly in doing that, abdicating a little bit of responsibility. And I think the problem is, when you talk to many Tory MPs that are unhappy with Boris Johnson, they don't necessarily believe this is all some kind of contrived row whipped up by opposition parties and the media. I was in Tiverton yesterday when that by-election result came through, and talking to voters there, it's pretty clear that they don't think this is all just some sort of party political or media conspiracy to get at Boris Johnson. A lot of them believe that the issues do lie with the Prime Minister. Now, saying all of that, I think as big an issue, if not a bigger issue, with some of the people I was talking to yesterday in Tiverton was cost of living. And on that, I don't think Boris Johnson had that much to offer. I think there was really the suggestion there that we shouldn't expect public sector pay to go up by anywhere near the rate of inflation because of worries about contributing to spiralling prices. And on tax cuts as well, Beth Rigby pushed him on whether we can get any tax cuts next year, and he wouldn't go there anyway either. So I think the suspicion there will be that we have to wait until 2024 for any cuts in rates of taxation. I think on the other big question that Tory MPs might have been looking for this weekend, of whether Boris Johnson recognises some of the problems and recognises the need to change, or maybe as Oliver Dowden put it in his resignation letter when he stepped down as party chair, whether the business as usual cannot carry on. I thought it was interesting what Boris Johnson said when he said that as a leader, he has to decide which criticism really matters, and that was his job. Now, that sounds a lot like deciding which criticism to take on board and discarding the stuff that is more inconvenient, if you like. So it's dangerously close to a sort of head in the sand strategy. And another line that he said in another interview this morning is that he is not going to have a psychological transformation in his character. That will all worry Tory MPs who are maybe looking for a sense from Boris Johnson of the scale of the issue at the moment and an acknowledgement that more change has to come.
OK, Rob, thank you very much.